Hello everyone and welcome to the first day of class. So as I said before, these are tools for our corset. This is my pattern paper, my all brown paper. This is my master ruler. I have an extra one, my tape, my pencil or pen, and also I have the measurements that I am going to be using for this class. So let's get into it. But before that, the measurements you're going to be needing to make your corsets is your back or your shoulder measurement. You need your bust measurement, you need your waist measurement, you need your shoulder to your under bust measurement, you need the under bust measurement, and also the person's half length. For my pattern of cutting, if I can get the shoulder to under bust measurement, then I just add 4 inches and then I get my waist measurement automatically, and that just works for me. So right here I have my shoulder measurement, my bust, my waist, my under bust, and my shoulder to under bust measurement. Right, so let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be folding my pattern paper in two, like this. Just going to fold it so it is equal. Yeah, and once I have folded my pattern paper, I can get into the cutting. Okay, so the first thing I am going to be doing is slanting my shoulder like this. My shoulders are always slanted. So right after that, you want to take your shoulder measurement or your back measurement. I'm going to be using 14 inches as my back measurement for this particular corset. 14 divided by 2 is 7. I always had half inches extra for joining, so in total I'm getting 7.5. So from this point, I am going to be measuring, adding 1 inch to the 7.5 I got from the shoulder to get the armhole, which I'm going to now be using as 8.5. After that, I am going to be connecting this line from my shoulder to the new point I marked as my armhole point, and I'm going to be ruling this out. I hope we can see. So yeah, after that, now the next thing I'm going to be doing is to take my shoulder to under bust measurement and place it. So my shoulder to under bust for this corset is 14, and like I said earlier, to get my waist point, I just add 4 inches to whatever my shoulder to under bust is. So 14 adding 4, 1 2 3 4, I'm getting 18, and I'm just going to add 1 more inch just for sewing allowance to this point. So I've gotten my under bust measurement, I've gotten my waist measurement, and now I need my bust point. For my bust point, I also go up by 4 inches depending on the size of the person that I am making this corset for. Most times it depends on the size. Sometimes you can go up higher, sometimes, or if you can take your bust point measurement on the person, just take the bust point. For this bust point, my bust point here is going to be 10 inches. Your bust point could be 9.5 inches, your bust point could be 9 inches, depending on the person's body size. But for this particular corset, my bust point is going to be 10. So after marking all this out, I'm going to be ruling the lines. I'm trying to make them darker so you guys can see them clearly in the video. Yeah, so I am going to be, oh God, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake there. I'm going to be drawing these lines. Yeah, I'm going to be drawing these lines. So as I said before, this is my under bust. This is my bust point or BP, and this is my waist point, as I have marked here. So the next thing you want to do is you want to get your nipple to nipple measurement or bust span. my bust span or nipple to nipple measurement for this corset is 4 inches, meaning the person's nipple to nipple or bust span is 8. So 8 inches divided by 2 is giving me 4. So on my bust point now, I am going to measure that 4 inches. But before that, sorry, you measure out half inches on this side of your pattern. You measure out this half inch from the bust point down to the waistline. Now this half inches is for that center point. You know, in every corset we have this center point that your cup, before your cup, there's this really tiny center point. So this is what this half inch is. You remember this, our pattern is on fold. So when you open this pattern now, this half inches is now 1 inches. Do you understand? It is now 1 and not half. So after marking out this half inch, I am going to be ruling the line. I'm going to be marking that out. Yes, so I have my half inch, and now I am going to take my 4 inches bust span measurement from this half, not from the very edge. I'm starting my measurements from the half I already took. So now this is my bust span or nipple to nipple measurement, which is 4 inches, and I'm going to be marking this from the bust point to the waist point. Same thing I did in the beginning. Just take this line and take it up straight. Okay, for this nipple to nipple or bust span line, you can extend it upwards because your cup is going to be coming out, and then we're going to have a dart and all of that. So after doing this, the next thing that you want to do is you want to create your dart for your corset, because you can't have a corset without darts, am I right? So on the waist point, the waist, you're going to measure out 1 inch on both sides of the pattern. 1 inch on this side and 1 inch. Oh, I'm so sorry, you can't see it. Yes, so on the waist point, that's the final line, you're going to measure out 1 inch. Exactly 1 inch on both sides, 1 inch on this side and 1 inch on the other side. You want to repeat the same process on the underbust line. Also on the underbust, you're going to also measure out 1 inch on both sides of your pattern. After doing this, you want to connect these two lines together. Just connect them straight to the underbust. Okay, so after drawing these lines, you want to come down from your bust points. From your bust point, please. You want to come down from your bust point, which is the first line that we drew. You want to come down on this bust span or nipple to nipple line by 1 inch. Just 1 inch is okay. I am coming down by 1 inch here because I want a perfectly round cup at this point here. So I am going to take my ruler. You can draw your line straight like this, or you can give it a little bit of like a curve if you want, whatever method or whatever way you feel like it's going to work for you. But for me, I want to use this curved side, and I'm just going to draw my line and connect it to this point where I marked 1 inch below the bust point. And then you want to just connect. So I have created a dart, as you can see. I have created my dart. So the next thing you want to do is, depending on how high or how low you want your corset cups to be, you know, corsets are always very exposing most of the time. But if you don't want it to be too exposing, you don't want to show too much of your cleavage or your breast out, you can just take it from this point, from this very first point here at the half inch that we measured on the bust point, and just give it your curve. You understand? But if you want it to be really low, like you want a very beautiful looking corset that, you know, just balances well, looks nice, is exposing but at the same time not too much, from your bust point, remember this is our bust point BP, you want to come down by ½ inches. If you come down by 1, it will be too much because then that center point is going to go too low into your cup. But ½ inches is just perfect for me. And what I like to do if I want a corset that is exposy or not too exposy, I just, from this bust point, remember this line from our nipple to nipple that we extended, I can either come up by 1½ inches or by 2 inches depending. But for this corset, I am going to be going up by just 1½ inches. After that, you can use your hands if you want from this point and just draw, or if you want, you can just use your ruler for a finer, neater finish. You just want to connect this like this, and then what you want to do again is you want to take your ruler and from this point, this ½ inch that we came down below at the bust point, you want to give it a curve. Now this is where we create our cup. This is where you create your corset cup. So you want to take your ruler and just, okay, so as I was saying, you want to create your corset cup now. So you just want to set this, let this your ruler be touching this ½ inch that we came down by and then touching this other point here, and you just want to connect your line. You can see that we are set to form our corset cup. Now usually, okay, so I'm so sorry, I don't know what happened, but my phone just kind of stopped recording and I did not know. So how I achieved this was I just measured what I got at this point. So from this point here, you want to measure what you have. I have about 3.7. Yes, I have about 3.7. So you can place exactly what you have. For this part, I used 4 inches instead of 3.7 because it is very close. If you have like 4 inches here, you can replace the same 4 inches on the other side. But if you want to, you can add 1 inches because I think this side is fuller. This is the fuller part of our bust. It's fuller than the center part where our cleavage and the rest is. So after that, when you mark out your 4 inches, all you want to do is connect, place your ruler and just connect, draw out that line. After that, what you want to do is reset your ruler to this part. Remember, we got only this first curve, and then you just want to place your ruler and you want to get the second curve. Also, I said that if you want to make a higher cup, you want a more covered cup, you don't want your bust or your breasts to show or to be too exposed. So remember, we came down here by ½ inch. What you want to do is you want to remain at your bust point, and from there, once you remain at your bust point, what you want to do is you just want to do the same thing you did here. You could use your hand to just, you know, draw your line to be higher, and then you have a more covered cup. If you want, you could use your ruler and just, you know, get that shape, and then you have a more covered cup. But for this particular corset, I want my corset to just be normal, a little bit exposing, not too much, you know, just perfect. So after that, after you've gotten your cup, you can see your cup is already looking sumptuous, looking delicious. You know that yes, my corset is getting ready. Next thing you want to do is you want to put your bust measurement. So my bust for this particular corset is 38. I'm going to be using 38 as the bust for this corset, and 38 divided into 4 places, I got 9.5. 9.5 inches. So that 9.5 inches, now I'm going to take my measurement from these ½ inches that we brought here, not from the beginning of your pattern, from the ½ inches that we took here, and you want to measure your 9.5. After that, remember that we created a dart here which is ½ inch on both sides. Now half plus half is going to give you 1 inch. Now you have to replace this 1 inch in order for your corset to not be too small. You do not want, after all this beauty, after all this hard work of drafting, then your corset, you want to sew the person's clothes and then you can't find allowance to sew. You understand? So now you want to replace this ½ inch, this 1 inch, because half plus half is 1, and then you replace it and add it. So now I have 10.5. After that, you want to add just 2 inches. If you want, you can go with 2.5 inches, 3 inches to be on the safe side. and not lose any allowance. But for this corset, I'm just going to be adding 2 inches, which gave me 12.5 in total. So the under bust of this person's measurement is 31, and the same thing, I am going to be dividing my 31 into 4, and I'm getting like 7.7. I'm just going to approximate to 8 inches. So 8 inches. Remember that we took out 1 inch here and 1 inch in total. This is 2 inches out that we took for our dart. Now you want to replace these 2 inches because you don't want your corset to be small, right? So you have 8 inches as the under bust measurement plus these 2 that you took out. This is that you're going to remove it, but you need that allowance to come back. If not, your corset will be too small. Do you understand me? I hope you all understand. So now I got 8 already, plus this 2, that is 10, plus another 2 inches. These 2 inches I'm adding is the same 2 inches I added at the bust, which is my seam allowance or sewing allowance, as you might know it. So which is giving me 12. Now I'm going to take my waist measurement. My waist measurement is 30 divided into 4 also. I'm going to get 7.5. Now 7.5, the same thing you did at the under bust. You just want to repeat the same thing. 7.5 plus 2, I have 9.5 here as my body measurement after replacing these 2 inches for that. And after that, I'm just going to add the same 2 inches again as my seam allowance or sewing allowance. After that, I'm just going to connect my lines. Yes, so I have gotten my body measurement. As you can see, our corset is ready basically. So remember that our cup stopped here, right? Now you're going to be wondering, it stopped here, what am I going to do about this space? It's going to be unequal. You just want to take your ruler or use your hand if you want to, and you just want to connect your corset. Just want to take it in somehow. I'm going to use my hand for this part because I feel like it blends in more, and I'm just going to blend it in like this. Yeah, that's all. That's just it. That's at the bust point, just to blend in. So that is it. Now if you want, or if you are making a corset that has a yoke, that you want to mix the top of the fabric, after this your corset, you want to put something, you want to put nets or lace, skin tone net, skin tone mesh, you want to place another fabric at this top point. So what you're going to do now, very simple, very quick. All you have to do, is take your neck, like the measurement you want to use for the neck width, and for this one I am going to be using 3.5 as my width, and I'm going to be using 3 inches as the depth of the neck of this corset. That is if you want to put a yoke. If you are adding a yoke to this dress, all you have to do is just mark your neck, and then this is your yoke. Yes, this is your yoke. So when you are cutting, you know that yes, this is my yoke. Basically it is already created. So now next step is, let us get into cutting, so you can see how to properly cut out this beauty that we just drafted. So I'm going to be pinning just because I do not want my paper to get scattered. I don't want my corset to be scattered at the end of the day. So I'm just going to pin my paper so that it doesn't, scatter. Nothing is scattering, everything is just in place. Yeah. So once I am done pinning, so let's get into the cutting of this corset really quickly. So first things first, of course, you're going to take out the waist point. Just want to take this out completely. Next thing, you can take out the body like this. So I'm going to remove this part because, of course, you remember I am not using the armhole or anything. So after that, right, you can see the corset from this angle. Now you can see what it looks like. So for the cutting of this one now, you want to remove these darts. So you're going to just cut like this. You stop at your underbust point, you cut out the second one, stop at the underbust point, then you continue towards this point like this. Just want to take out this dart. So next thing is you are going to take out the second part of it also. Okay, next thing you want to do is, remember this 1/2 inch that we came down from the bust point. You know we came down by an 1/2 inch right here. So I'm just going to, yes, so after marking this out, now you just want to cut. Yes, from this point you're just going to cut, and then you go up your curve. Now you're not going to throw away these parts, these top parts right here. If you are going to be using your yoke, you do not need to throw that out, you're just going to keep it. But for this other one now, you just want to take out these darts. You can see what it looks like, you can see. So next thing is to cut out your cup. As you can see, just come to this part and then just cut it out. Now this type of corset is a regular type of corset. This is the padded one, the one you use your S-stay or whatever type of stay or interfacing you use in padding. I use S-stay personally, and just it works perfectly well for me. So now I have my cups, I have my center front, side front. I am going to be marking this out now. So this I am going to mark as number 1, and I like to mark on both sides so that you do not take your number 1, which is supposed to be at the cleavage point, sorry, the center point, and put it at the side. So I like to mark, so this is my number 1 and this is my number 2. Also I like to put that, like, just write out seam or seam allowance on this part, so I know exactly where I am joining, so I don't go and place it like this or place it like this. You understand me? I also like to use arrows. Please use as much as all of these things if possible, so you do not make mistakes with any of your corset, so you know exactly where it is facing, because this cup thing can be very, very confusing. Right, so now my arrows are facing up. I know this is the top of my corset, this is where it's meant to be up, and this is where it's meant to be down, so that I don't turn it like this and then this is down and this is up. Do you understand? That is the whole point of creating these little arrows that I put on the cup. That's the point of the arrows, and the seam also, so that I know exactly where I am joining together. Then this is my center front pattern. I'm going to just write CF. So when I open this up, now I'm going to open it so you guys can see what it looks like. So you can see you've gotten the center point, the center of your corset. This is that little 1/2 inch. You see it open now, it is giving 1 inch, and you're still going to add your sewing allowance to it when you want to sew. So when you want to place this on your fabric, you're just going to add your necessary allowances. That is going to be for my masterclass students. People that paid for the masterclass are going to see how I place this on a fabric and cut it and just sew it to perfection. So this is my center front, this is my side front, or SF as I like to mark it. And you know, that's just that for that. If I am using a yoke, if I'm going to be using the yoke, remember that we slanted the shoulder, so of course. Okay, so I have removed the yoke. I cut out the neck, slant my shoulders. You know, this is the parts we took out the cup from. And yeah, so this is if you want to maybe mix your fabric with anything else, but I'm not going to be mixing. I am not going to be mixing with any other thing. I am just going to be sticking to my corset. So now we just cut only the front part of the corset. It is time to cut the back. If you want, I am so sorry, I completely forgot, you can just, before separating this corset at all, you know, when it is still joined together with the dart and everything, you just take out the body like this and you place it on the back so that you can get your zipper allowance. But I like to do it like this. I just, you know, separate everything and then I cut the back. So let's get in. Okay, so quickly for the back pattern, as you can see, I've slanted my shoulder. I kept 2 inches allowance. I left 2 inches allowance on this part. So this is for my zip. That is if you are using a zip on your corset, probably a top or something. But we all know that for a perfect snatch, like a well snatched corset, you do not need your zip. You use eyelets or the rope method that most tailors or some fashion designers use, and just, you know, rope it to give a proper snatching fit. But for this one, I'm going to be showing you how it is with the zip. So I kept 2 inches. I left out 2 inches for the zipper allowance. Next thing you want to do is same thing you did on the front. Measure out your 4 inches, which is the nipple to nipple, because we are going to be creating a dart at the back of this dress. So what you want to do is, after measuring out the bust span or nipple to nipple, the back is quite simple, really simple. So what you want to do is measure out 1/2 inch on both sides of this pattern. You know, in the front we used 1 inch on both sides, but for the back it is just 1/2 inch that is needed. So you measure the 1/2 inch on the waist point. As you can see, this is our bust point, under bust point, and our waist point, just like the front. So after you measure out your 1/2 inch on both sides on the waist point, you just connect straight up to the bust point. So this is your dart, which you will not be needing anymore. As you can see, this is your dart. We've created a dart for the back. The next thing you want to do is just, you know, place the measurement, same measurement you got at the front. So this is why I said you can just, before cutting out or separating the front pattern, you can just place it so you get the exact same thing at the back. You know, you just get the exact same thing at the back and you're good to go. I know you're going to be wondering, oh, what about this dart at this back? Aren't we going to replace? Now, you do not need to replace this one because the dart in the front is bigger than the dart at the back. But if you want to, you can just, if you've separated like this, you can measure your waist. Yeah, so you can just measure your waist measurements. Then this is 1 inch, is obviously 1/2 inch here, 1/2 inch here, added together is 1 inch. Replace the 1 inch and then add your 2 inches allowance, and then you just, you know, just draw, just connect. Now most times for the back, you can leave your back straight like this if you want, but I like to slant mine in a little bit so it has this very cute V shape at the back. It really makes your corset look really nice. Your shape here can be curved, it can be deeper than this if you want, but I just, you know, I just go down a little. I'm so sorry, you can see the slanting right here, so I just go down a little. This is just, yeah, 1 inch, so I just, you know, just go down. If you want it to be lower, you can make it lower, and then after that you just, you know, just cut out your pattern. Okay, so I am done cutting out the body, and I just want to, I just want to pin my pattern, right, and then just take out the dart. So I'm just going to take out the dart now. Yeah, so we are done. So if you are using a zipper, you have your zipper allowance. I'm just going to open this up. You know, you have your zipper allowance and you put your zip. And if you are not using a zip, like if you do not want to use a zip, you want to use like eyelets, you know, with the rope backward, you just take out your zip allowance and, you know, just take out a little bit. You can take out 1 inch or 2 inches depending on how wide you want the opening at the back to be. sometimes I use 1 inch, sometimes I use 2 inches. Just take out as much as you feel like you need, depending on how, oh sorry, I didn't cut this straight, depending on how wide or how open you want the bag to be. Don't forget to place your arrows so that you know where these things are facing, you know the correct side. This is the top and this is the bottom, and this is your seam. This is your seam allowance where you will be joining. So what you want to do when you place your fabric is just to add your necessary allowances on your fabric, and then you can cut. Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you for being a part of this class. I really hope that you really enjoyed